At a family meeting in my own living room, my parents looked me straight in the eye and said, "We're giving this house to your sister." My chest tightened. My hands shook and for a moment, I couldn't even breathe. But little did they know, I wasn't planning to leave quietly. Not this time. Seconds. If you've ever felt powerless while someone tried to take what's rightfully yours, hit subscribe now, like this video, and stay tuned. I promise. This is a story where justice isn't just served, it's unforgettable. I still remember that day as if it were yesterday. I had just finished setting up the living room for what I thought would be a normal Sunday family meeting. I had coffee ready, snacks laid out, and even my favorite throw blanket folded neatly on the couch. But nothing could prepare me for the words that would hit me like a punch to the gut. "We're giving this house to your sister." I froze. My sister, who had never contributed a single cent to this home, who had been the embodiment of irresponsibility, was suddenly getting everything I had spent years working for. I felt my heart race. I could almost hear the blood pounding in my ears. My hands balled into fists, but I forced myself to remain seated. "You've worked so hard," my mother said softly, "but we think it's time to reward your sister. She needs a fresh start, and you have your own career now." My own career, the thing I'd poured every ounce of myself into. Was that supposed to make me feel better? And then my sister, smug and grinning, leaned back in her chair, clearly savoring my discomfort. I wanted to scream. I wanted to storm out. I wanted revenge. But I didn't, not yet, because I realized something crucial in that moment. Revenge, if done right, wasn't about screaming or losing control. It was about strategy, about patience, about making them regret underestimating me without ever touching me with my anger. I excused myself from the room under the guise of checking on some work emails. In reality, I was planning. For days, I mapped it out in my head. My sister had always been careless with money. She relied entirely on my parents' support and had no idea how to handle property, bills or maintenance. That was my advantage. I started small. I quietly went to the bank and checked the ownership documents of the house. It was a shock, turns out. My parents had assumed that handing the house over would be easy, but the paperwork wasn't entirely in their names. There were clauses, technicalities, little loopholes buried in legal jargon. My mind raced as I read every line. And then I found it, the golden ticket, a clause that would make the transfer of ownership conditional on consent from the primary occupant, me. I smiled. It was perfect. My parents thought they were in control. My sister thought she was about to inherit the biggest prize in her life. And yet, I held all the cards. The next few days, I kept up appearances. I smiled, served coffee, laughed at jokes, pretended nothing was wrong. But inside, I was meticulous, methodical, calculating every step of my plan. Finally, the day came to confront them again. My parents were eager, practically vibrating with excitement as they called another family meeting. My sister strutted in, confident as ever, thinking she was about to walk into her victory. So my father began, "We've decided to finalize the transfer of the house." I leaned back in my chair, calm, collected, almost serene. "Oh, is that so?" I asked, my voice soft, measured, but carrying an edge that made them pause. "Yes," my mother said a little too eagerly. "We just need your signature to make it official." I nodded slowly, reaching into my bag, but instead of a pen, I pulled out the stack of documents I had carefully prepared. My sister's confident smile faltered as she saw what I was holding. "These are all the conditions and legal requirements for the transfer," I said, flipping through them. "Funny thing, there's a clause you all seem to overlook. The house cannot be transferred without the written consent of the primary resident. And according to the documents, that's me." My parents' mouths opened and closed. My sister's face turned white. "But that's impossible," she stammered. "Not impossible," I replied, placing the papers firmly on the table. "Completely legal, completely binding, and unfortunately, I am not giving my consent." The room was silent. The tension was electric. I could feel my heart still pounding, but this time, it wasn't fear or anger. It was exhilaration, victory. "But you can't," my sister finally managed, her voice cracking. "Mom, Dad, tell her she can't do this." My parents looked at each other nervously. They realized their oversight. They had assumed I'd either acquiesce or argue, but they didn't expect me to be this prepared, this decisive. "I've spent years building this life," I said, my voice steady, "and I will not hand it over because you think it's fair. If fairness is your concern, then consider this. Fairness is earned, not given. And I earned this house." My sister sat down, defeated, her dreams crumbling in front of her. My parents tried to protest, but I held up a hand. "No arguments. Everything here is above board, fully legal and binding. This house stays with me. You wanted to take it? Well, you underestimated me. And now," I let the pause linger, savoring the moment. "You've learned exactly what happens when you do." It was more than just a legal victory. It was a lesson in respect, in boundaries, and in the consequences of underestimating someone. The sense of relief, of vindication, washed over me. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt liberated. After that day, the dynamic in my family changed forever. My sister, once smug and dismissive, had to face the reality of her own irresponsibility. My parents, humbled, realized that underestimating me came at a price. I finally understood something important. Revenge doesn't have to be loud, messy, or cruel. Sometimes, the most satisfying revenge is quiet, clever, and inevitable. The satisfaction comes not from hurting others, but from reclaiming your power and showing, beyond doubt, that you cannot be dismissed. Life has a way of testing us. Sometimes the people closest to us make the biggest mistakes or try to take what isn't theirs. The real victory isn't in anger, it's in strategy, patience, and knowing your worth. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or dismissed, remember this story. Share it, comment below your own experiences, and hit that subscribe button, because sometimes the best revenge is watching justice unfold in the most unexpected, satisfying way.